In our previous episode on the economic rise of the Roman Empire, we explored how Egypt, rich in grain, gold, and administrative brilliance, became a cornerstone of imperial prosperity. But beyond the fertile Nile and desert mines, it was trade that truly transformed Egypt into Rome's eastern gateway. Strategically positioned, the province became a vital artery for commerce flowing between the Mediterranean and the distant lands of the East. In this episode, we delve deeper into that story, examining the sea routes that connected Rome to India, the history behind this maritime network, and the exotic goods that reshaped the Roman economy. Welcome to our exploration of the Red Sea trade route, the Indian Ocean connection, and Rome's far-reaching embrace of global commerce. Beyond the deserts of Arabia and the shifting tides of the Red Sea lay a land the Romans only dreamed of, a place whispered about in markets, debated in senatorial halls, and etched into the ambitions of emperors. To Rome, India was not just a distant territory. It was a legend made real, a realm of spices and silks, of gods and gold, of wisdom older than the Republic itself. By the 1st century AD, the Indian subcontinent rivaled the Roman Empire in population, power, and prestige. Its cities thrived with temples, marketplaces, and monumental architecture. Its trade routes stretched across oceans, and its riches, pepper, cotton, gemstones, and perfumes, seduced even the Eternal City. But this was no passive paradise. India's kingdoms, ruled by the Satavahanas, Cheras, Cholas, and others, were naval powers in their own right, commanding fleets and forging diplomatic ties. When Roman ships reached Indian shores, they found not subjects but equals. The connection was forged not by conquest but by wind. The monsoon, an ancient rhythm of nature, became the invisible engine of empire, carrying Roman vessels across the sea and bringing back the wealth that would fill palaces, temples, and dreams. Long before Rome turned east, Egypt had already reached south, to the fabled land of Punt and the riches of incense. Alexander the Great pushed farther, leaving his mark on the Indian frontier. And the Ptolemies, his successors in Egypt, built the Red Sea ports and trade networks that Rome would inherit and perfect. In this video, we follow the winds that carried Rome to India. We explore the cities they touched, the goods they exchanged, and the myths they inspired. From Muziris to Alexandria, from the elephant hunts of Ptolemaic kings to Augustus's golden ambitions, we trace a story not of war, but of wonder. This is the tale of how two great civilizations met, not on the battlefield, but in the marketplace. When Augustus became master of Egypt after the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, he did not merely inherit a province, he acquired the most strategically placed launchpad for eastward trade in the known world. With Alexandria as the western anchor and the Red Sea ports as eastern gateways, Augustus now stood poised to bridge the wealth of India with the heart of the empire, and all of it would ride the monsoon winds. The key to this transformation lay in a natural phenomenon long exploited by Indian, Arabian, and East African sailors, but only now truly appreciated by the Romans: the seasonal monsoon system. These winds were the silent engineers of antiquity's maritime revolution. From May to September, they blew powerfully from the southwest, pushing ships across the Indian Ocean toward India's western coasts. Then, from November to March, they reversed, from the northeast carrying ships home to the Red Sea. What had once taken months of coastal hugging and uncertain navigation was now a matter of weeks, sometimes even fortnights, on the open sea. With this new understanding, Rome leapt forward. Under Augustus' orders, infrastructure was revitalized. The port of Myos Hormos, closer and more accessible than Berenice, became the chief embarkation point for Indian trade. From the Nile city of Koptos, Roman merchants and camel caravans trekked across the eastern desert, guided by military patrols and protected by fortified stations. Water cisterns were dug at regular intervals, and watchtowers with signal fires warned of bandits or sandstorms. What had once been a perilous journey became, under the Roman system, a calculated operation. Roman ships, sturdy, broad-beamed merchantmen known as monsoon ships, set sail from Myos Hormos each summer, catching the southwest wind toward Barbaricon, Barigaza, and Muziris. These Indian ports, located along the Indus and on the Malabar coast, were the welcoming arms of ancient India's trade empire. When Roman ships arrived, they found not primitive docks, but thriving cities bustling with merchants, scribes, tax collectors, and priests. Gold and silver changed hands rapidly, for India accepted bullion, not barter, and in return came cargoes of unimaginable richness. The Roman fascination with India was more than mercantile, it was mythical. In Roman literature and court gossip, India became a realm of paradoxes and dreams. It was said that the trees wept perfume, that snakes guarded hoards of jewels, and that its people, though exotic, were governed by reason and justice. Pliny the Elder, in his encyclopedic natural history, marveled at the scale of trade. He estimated that over 50 million sesterces in gold and silver flowed to India each year in exchange for spices, gems, silks, ivory, and incense. One document, known as the Muziris papyrus, offers a rare window into the details of this exchange. It records the cargo of a single Roman merchant ship, the Hermopolitan, which had docked at Muziris. Its contents were staggering: 135 tons of black pepper, 83 tons of malabathrum, Indian cinnamon, hundreds of elephant tusks, over 3 tons of tortoise shell, and cases of nard, a rare aromatic oil. The total value of this one shipment exceeded 9 million sesterces, and it represented only a fragment of the larger trade stream. Multiplied by the over 120 ships sailing annually during Augustus's reign, the scale of Roman-Indian commerce becomes awe-inspiring. Indian ocean trade was no longer the domain of elite adventurers. It was the lifeblood of the Roman economy. Eastern luxuries now filled Roman homes. Pepper in every dish, silk in every cloak, sapphires in every ring. But with this affluence came a dilemma. Pliny, while admiring the exotic products of the East, also expressed alarm. He warned that Rome was hemorrhaging precious metals, bleeding its wealth into the East without equivalent return. India, China, and Arabia take from our empire 100 million sesterces every year, he lamented, so that we might drape our women in purple and perfume our breath with spices. Rome, he feared, was consuming itself in luxury. Still, the empire did not turn back. It adapted. Roman traders began to build semi-permanent communities in Indian ports, negotiating directly with local rulers, bypassing intermediaries, and even learning local languages. Roman coinage, especially the gold aureus and silver denarius, circulated widely across India, often hoarded in temples and palaces. Indian artisans began to imitate Roman amphorae, statues, and glassware, and Indian spices gained a semi-divine status in Roman medicine and cuisine. In return, Indian rulers received Roman armor, glass, wine, and, most importantly, recognition. Trade embassies passed between Indian courts and Roman governors. Some Indian kings even sent gifts to Augustus himself. Coins from this period bear legends in Latin and Prakrit alike, celebrating the friendship between Caesar and the Maharaja. What had begun as a monsoon-aided voyage had evolved into a global exchange of power, prestige, and philosophy. The Indian subcontinent, once an unreachable land of legend, was now entangled in the rhythms of Rome, prestige, and philosophy. The Indian subcontinent, once an unreachable land of legend, was now entangled in the rhythms of Rome, and with every ship that sailed from Myos Hormos to Muziris and back again, the two ancient worlds grew ever closer. As the sails of Roman ships crested the horizon of the Indian Ocean and slipped into the bustling ports of India's west coast, they came not as invaders, but as supplicants of commerce. These were not fleets of war, but fleets of desire, driven by a hunger not for conquest, but for the exotic, the rare, the irreplaceable. India had what Rome craved, and what it offered, no other land could match. From the humid, spice-laden hills of the Malabar coast to the riverine kingdoms of the Ganges plain, India was a garden of botanical and mineral wonder. But among its many gifts, spices stood supreme. Chief up among the prized commodities was black pepper, or piper nigrum, a spice so integral to Roman cuisine that it became a measure of wealth in its own right. Once used only in elite circles, pepper soon trickled down into the kitchens of affluent citizens and even soldiers, prized for its ability to flavor food, preserve meats, and serve as a base for medicines and perfumes. Pliny the Elder lamented that this humble seed, worth a handful of coins in India, sold for its weight in silver in the forums of Rome. Next came malabathrum, the aromatic leaf from the cinnamomum family, found in the forests of Assam and Bengal. Its oils were distilled into perfumes and unguents, used not only to scent Roman baths and banquet halls, but also to anoint emperors and gods. Nard, a rare root-based perfume from the Himalayas, was another sacred import, reserved for the temples of Vesta and the tombs of the aristocracy. From the jungles came ivory, carved into furniture, statues, and ceremonial objects. The tusks of Indian elephants, longer, denser, and whiter than their African cousins, were especially valued. Each piece that arrived at Alexandria or Puteoli carried not just a price tag, but a story of hunts in the subcontinent's thick jungles, of mahouts who wrangled beasts through monsoons and rivers, of long voyages across seas of uncertainty. Then there were the precious stones, sapphires, rubies, diamonds. Indian mines, especially in Golconda and the Deccan Plateau, offered a trove of gemstones unlike any Rome had seen. The Roman aristocracy adopted these stones as symbols of divine favor and imperial grandeur. Worn in rings, crowns, and ceremonial armor, they were declarations of wealth and worldliness. Even the emperors were not immune. Augustus was known to wear a ring with a stone carved in India, delicate, bright, and as enduring as his reign. And if one looked beyond the glitter of gems, there lay the shimmer of silk. Though silk originated in China, it often reached Roman hands through Indian intermediaries. Indian merchants in ports like Muziris or Tamralipta acquired bolts of Chinese silk, sometimes mixing it with Indian cotton to create unique fabrics of shimmering texture. These silks and cottons, dyed in Tyrian purple, indigo, and saffron, captivated Roman fashion and lit up imperial festivals with hues unseen in the Mediterranean world. But India's gift was not just material, it was cultural. With trade came exchange of knowledge. Indian numerals, still in their rudimentary forms, began to influence merchant calculations. The Roman knowledge of medicine, astrology, and botany expanded through Indian manuscripts brought westward. Roman doctors experimented with Indian herbs, from ginger to cardamom, turmeric to sandalwood, incorporating them into treatments for indigestion, arthritis, even love potions. Philosophical ideas, too, trickled westward. While Buddhism and Hinduism remained largely confined to the East, Roman philosophers began hearing whispers of sages who meditated in silence, of worldviews that placed karma and dharma above law and conquest. In the twilight of empire, as Rome grew weary of decadence, such tales of Indian simplicity would stir the imaginations of Stoics and ascetics alike. There were even Romans who stayed behind. Roman merchants, scholars, and adventurers who fell in love with the lands they traded with, marrying local women, establishing families, and founding small enclaves in cities like Muziris. Roman coins have been found buried in Indian soil, often decades or centuries after their minting, suggesting they became more than currency. They became keepsakes, memories, relics of a distant power. And in return, what did Rome give to India to justify all these expenses? This was shocking at first, so let's dive deeper into the trade balance. Though the balance of trade tilted heavily in favor of India, Rome did send gifts of its own. Glassware, beautifully blown in Phoenician furnaces. Red gloss pottery known as terra sigillata. Wine, aged in Spanish and Italian cellars. Coral and amber from the western seas. And armor, weapons, and tools of Roman steel. But the greatest gift Rome gave was its gold and silver, tons of it. The Eastern trade, Pliny warned, drained the empire of its bullion. But what it drained in coin, it filled in prestige. Rome's link to India enhanced its image as a world empire, a power so vast it touched every shore, every horizon, every fabled city whispered about in the annals of geographers. And so ship by ship, coin by coin, the bond between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean deepened. The spice caravans continued. The monsoon winds blew. The Indian Ocean echoed with the sounds of Latin and Prakrit, of oars slicing through salt water and camel hooves pounding desert rock. India had become not a province but a partner, not a conquest but a collaborator, a titan of trade whose riches helped feed the Roman treasury, whose silks draped imperial shoulders, whose spices perfumed the air of 1,000 banquets. To the Romans, India was more than an idea. It was a destination, and in this vast subcontinent, Muziris was the gateway. The Greeks and Romans called it Muziris, the Tamils Muchiri, and Arab traders simply referred to it as the Pepper City. Its location was ideal, protected by backwaters, linked to the Periyar River, and surrounded by fertile lands and spicy-laden hills. Roman ships arrived by the dozens during the monsoon, their sails black with soot and hulls packed with silver. They anchored in Muziris' deep-water harbor and disgorged their cargo: coin, coral, wine, glassware, and slaves. In return, they took on black pepper, cardamom, malabathrum, pearls, ivory, cotton, indigo, and even artworks and statues. At times, Roman traders were so numerous that Latin was heard alongside Tamil and Prakrit in the market squares. It was here that East met West, not in war, but in trade and in awe. To step into Muziris in the 1st century AD was to enter a storm of color, noise, and scent. The fragrance of black pepper, freshly harvested from the forest hinterlands, drifted through the air, mingling with the smells of cardamom, cinnamon, and ghee. Elephants lumbered through crowded alleys, ivory tusks capped in gold. Merchants shouted in Tamil, Prakrit, Aramaic, and Latin, bartering in every tongue under the sun. Roman traders, though strangers, were not rare. Coins stamped with the visages of Augustus, Tiberius, and Nero were found in droves here, buried in temple hoards or lost in market squares. Roman amphorae, once filled with wine and olive oil, were unearthed near Indian homes, reused for spices or water storage. Roman glassware, light blue and impossibly delicate, decorated local altars and households. It was clear. Rome had come not as an invader, but as a guest. And a wealthy one. The Muziris papyrus, a remarkable surviving document discovered in Egypt, offers a priceless glimpse into this trade. It describes a merchant ship called the Hermopolis, docking at Muziris, and loading a stunning cargo, 135 tons of pepper, 83 tons of malabathrum oil, 60 cases of nard, elephant tusks, tortoise shells, and jewels. The value of this single shipment was astronomical. Its taxes alone worth more than a provincial governor's annual salary, and this was only one ship. Strabo recorded over 120 Roman merchant vessels sailing annually from the Red Sea to India, many of them docking at Muziris. If even a fraction of them matched the Hermopolis haul, the total volume of commerce between Rome and India was staggering. To reach the city of Muziris, Roman merchants endured a journey of epic proportions. From Alexandria, their goods were sent up the Nile to Koptos, then overland across the eastern desert to Myos Hormos, or Berenice, the Roman Red Sea ports. From there, they waited for the southwest monsoon. With the seasonal winds at their back, they would set sail into the open waters of the Indian Ocean, traversing thousands of kilometers in fast-moving merchant ships. The journey was not without peril. Pirates, storms, reef-laden coasts, and scurvy were constant threats, but the reward was too great to ignore. A successful voyage to India could double or triple an investor's fortune, and the social prestige of being a merchant in this elite trade was almost imperial. To command a ship to Muziris was to wield a kind of soft power, economic clout that shaped senatorial fortunes and imperial policy. It was no wonder, then, that the emperors themselves took interest. Augustus, Tiberius, and later Hadrian all enacted policies to regulate, tax, and protect this eastern trade. The revenues were vital, funding everything from legions on the Rhine to grain subsidies in the capital. Roman prefects in Egypt became de facto overseers of the India trade, ensuring customs collections were smooth, shipping schedules were maintained, and piracy was kept at bay. Yet, even as Rome gained, it remained humbled. For all its power, it never controlled the trade. It merely participated. India remained an equal in this equation, not a subject, and Muziris was the altar on which this mutual exchange was consecrated. As the 1st century turned into the 2nd, the volume of trade only increased. Muziris became the linchpin, the golden vein through which Rome drew its spices, silks, and jewels. The city, like Alexandria or Antioch, took on a mythic character in Roman minds, a place of endless pepper, untold riches, and wise men from the east. Yet, as with all golden ages, time would bring change. Silting rivers would eventually choke Muziris' harbors. Political upheaval and the rise of new ports like Kolam and Calicut would shift the balance of power. The sea itself, ever shifting, would redraw the coastlines. But during its prime, for nearly 2 centuries, Muziris was a cornerstone of the Roman economy, a glittering jewel at the edge of empire. Here, in the humid air of India's southern coast, Rome found a reflection of its own glory. And in the mirrors of trade, ideas, and faith, a bridge was built between 2 of the greatest civilizations the world had ever known. But Muziris was also vulnerable. By the 3rd century AD, a massive flood, or perhaps an earthquake, silenced its harbor. Sand silted the once great port. Traders shifted north to Barbaricon, or south to Nelsinda. The Roman presence in India began to ebb, not from conquest or rebellion, but from the quiet, inexorable hand of nature. And yet, for over 2 centuries, Muziris stood as Rome's window into India, a singular place where two great civilizations met not in war but in commerce. But, for now, let's go more in depth at how all this web of commerce functioned. As Roman ships vanished beyond the Red Sea each spring, drawn by the rhythm of the monsoon, they did not sail in vain. When they returned in autumn, their cargo told a tale not just of commerce, but of the luxuries that came to define the grandeur of Rome. Among all the goods from India, none held such sway as pepper. Harvested from the lush vines of the Malabar coast, it became a staple in Roman kitchens, used to flavor meats, wines, even honeyed sauces. Roman physicians praised it, perfumers bottled it, and senators debated its cost. By weight, it rivaled silver. The Muziris papyrus records a single shipment aboard the Hermopolis carrying over 135 tons. With over 100 such ships sailing annually, Rome may have consumed up to 16,000 tons of Indian pepper each year. Yet beyond the culinary, pepper was symbolic. Owning it was a mark of status, an aromatic display of wealth and reach. Even Emperor Tiberius once lamented, "We drain our silver to flavor our meat." Close behind pepper came malabathrum, the bay leaf of the East. Sourced from Himalayan forests, its oil became a prized perfume, burned in temples, worn by elites, and carried along trade routes from Alexandria to Antioch. Its scent lingered on the skin and in the memory, a whisper of distant jungles and monsoon lands. The Hermopolis again lists vast quantities of it, underscoring its status as mass luxury in Rome's global marketplace. India's jungles offered more than aroma. From them came ivory, harvested from elephants and shaped into combs, figurines, and religious icons. Ivory furniture and sculpture adorned elite Roman villas, and even the emperor's throne, Sella Iburnea, was carved from this pale treasure. Pearls from Tamilakam and Sri Lanka added glitter to Roman wardrobes. So valued were they that Pliny the Elder remarked bitterly that a woman's ears could carry the spoils of a province. Roman demand for pearls was insatiable, and Indian divers labored ceaselessly to meet it. Textiles, too, carried the mark of India. Fine cotton, woven in Madurai, reached Roman markets dyed in hues of indigo, saffron, and crimson. Known as venti, these garments were light and breathable, a welcome contrast to the coarse fabrics of the West. Even Seneca, ever the Stoic, admitted owning clothing so soft it could have been made of mist. Indian ports like Muziris and Barbaricon also served as intermediaries for silk from China, blending threads of East and West into a shared fabric of desire. From the forests and coasts came not only goods, but wonders. Tigers, unknown in the Roman world, prowled amphitheaters and dazzled crowds. Rhinoceroses, once mythical, were paraded in triumphs. Peacocks, parrots, and other exotic birds fluttered in imperial gardens, symbols of dominion and spectacle. But all this came at a cost. Pliny calculated that over 100 million sesterces left the empire each year to pay for Eastern luxuries. Rome exported few things India needed. It imported almost everything. To balance the books, Roman merchants often carried nothing but coin, and returned with cargo that would be auctioned to the highest bidder. It was unsustainable, and yet addictive. Augustus himself regulated the trade, capping interest rates and taxing imports at 25%. But demand never faltered. The appetite was too great. Spices and silks, perfumes and pearls, these were no longer foreign, they had become Roman. However, no empire is eternal. Even Rome, with its legions, its aqueducts, and its laws, would face the long twilight of decline. And so too would the Eastern trade that had once enriched it beyond imagination. By the late 3rd and early 4th centuries AD, several storm clouds gathered. First, the Pax Romana began to fray. Invasions along the Rhine and Danube forced emperors to divert attention, and coin, toward defense. The currency was devalued, inflation soared, and the silver that once paid for Indian luxuries now barely paid the legions. Meanwhile, the rise of the Sassanid Empire in Persia disrupted the overland routes. Roman-Parthian rivalry was replaced by Roman-Sassanid hostility. The caravan paths that were once used to carry Eastern wares to Palmyra and Antioch were now battlefields. Roman merchants were no longer welcome in Mesopotamia, and the overland trade grew dangerous and uncertain. Simultaneously, new naval powers emerged. Arab and Indian merchants, increasingly independent, dominated Indian Ocean trade. They no longer relied on Roman ships or silver. Trade patterns shifted southward, toward Aksum in East Africa, and later to the Islamic caliphates. Even within Rome, voices grew louder questioning the morality of such indulgence. Christian bishops denounced silk and spice as emblems of decadence. Luxury, they warned, had made Rome soft, had corrupted its soul. By the 5th century AD, the flow of Eastern goods had slowed to a trickle. The grand warehouses of Alexandria and Ostia stood half empty. No longer did 120 ships sail from Myos Hormos. The golden age of Rome's eastern trade was over.